Last Thursday, my entire world turned upside down when I checked my lottery ticket and realized I'd won $73 million. My hands trembled as I stared at those six numbers perfectly matched. Once the shock faded, one thought hit me like a freight train. I wasn't telling anyone about this money. My name is Samantha Brooks, but everyone calls me Sammy. I'm 38 years old. My family's history with finances is a minefield, and I wasn't ready to step into that mess. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. Before I share the crazy decision I made, hit that like button and subscribe to Total Revenge for more real stories about trust, betrayal, and the kind of revenge that reshapes your life. Before that earth-shattering Thursday, I was just another face in the crowd. I worked as a payroll clerk at a mid-sized logistics company in Denver, earning enough to get by but never enough to feel secure. My studio apartment on the city's edge was nothing special. Think thrift store furniture and a faucet that dripped no matter how many times I tightened it. Every morning, I'd wake up at 5:30, brew cheap coffee, and face the day with annoying worry about rent, car payments, and looming deadlines. My job demanded 55-hour weeks, especially during payroll season, leaving me exhausted and always one unexpected bill from panic. My family, complicated as putting it mildly. My parents, Ellen and Richard Brooks, divorced when I was 12 and both remarried within 18 months. My mom, Ellen, married Victor, a car dealership owner with deep pockets and an even deeper need to control them. My dad, Richard, a retired mechanic, wed Lorraine, a boutique owner obsessed with keeping up appearances. I have two siblings. My younger brother, Ethan, 34, is the family's golden child, graduated from a top-tier college, now a tech consultant with a sleek condo and a picture-perfect fiancée, Claire. Then there's my older sister, Natalie, 41, who's all charm but no stability. Bouncing between jobs and boyfriends, always needing a loan she swears she repay. Her promises are about as solid as a house of cards. Extended family brought more chaos. My Uncle Henry, my mom's older brother, was the one person I could count on. A librarian living paycheck to paycheck, he drove a rattling Toyota and lived in a cozy apartment packed with novels and old vinyl records. He never forgot my birthday, always calling with a warm laugh. On the other hand, my Aunt Vivian, my dad's younger sister, married into wealth and loved rubbing it in everyone's faces. Family dinners were her stage for critiquing my job, my apartment, even my single status. Her daughter Chloe inherited her entitlement but none of her money. Racking up credit card debt she pretended didn't exist. Money and family had left scars. 4 years ago, I emptied my savings to give Natalie $6,000 for an emergency car repair, only to find out she'd splurged on a designer purse instead. When Ethan needed $3,000 for a business trip, I put it on a credit card. He repaid $500 eventually. When Mom asked for help with a medical bill, I sent $1,500, only to see her and Victor posting from a Bahamas resort weeks later. The only person who knew the full extent of these betrayals was my best friend Mia, a graphic designer with her own struggles. She never judged and always kept me grounded when I felt used. Work wasn't much better. My boss Carla had a knack for taking credit for my reports in front of executives. My coworker Jared would slip out early, leaving me to fix his mistakes while he somehow landed the promotions. I kept my head down, hoping one day my hard work would pay off. Buying lottery tickets was my small rebellion, a $12 weekly ritual at the gas station. My family loved to mock it. Mom called it a fool's tax. Ethan said I'd have better luck investing in his ideas. And Dad droned on about odds and statistics. But those tickets were my sliver of hope, a chance at a life where I wasn't always one step from financial ruin. I had dreams, of course. I wanted to travel, see Paris, maybe Tokyo. I wanted to study graphic design like Mia and build a career I loved. I wanted a savings account that didn't make my stomach churn every time my car made a weird noise. But at 38, with student loans still lingering and a credit card balance that stuck like glue, those dreams felt like pipe dreams. I budgeted ruthlessly, hunted for sales, and drove a 12-year-old Civic that groaned in the cold. I'd perfected the art of seeming fine while mentally calculating every expense, dodging dinners out I couldn't afford. That Thursday, my 38th birthday, changed everything. After a grueling week where Carla took credit for my payroll system fix, I stopped at Ray's Gas and Go. "Happy birthday, Sammy." Ray called out, his smile as warm as always. He'd run the station for decades and knew every regular by name. "Thanks, Ray. The usual plus 2 extra for luck," I said, handing him $20 instead of $12. On a whim, I picked my own numbers. My birthday, 7 and 22. Mia's, 14. Henry's, 28. Ethan's, 3. And Mom's, 19. Numbers tied to people I cared about, even if they'd let me down. That night, I ordered pizza and opened a cheap bottle of wine Mia had given me as a gift. The lottery drawing aired at 7 p.m., but I was distracted, scrolling through posts of friends with fancier birthday plans. At 7:45, I remembered the tickets and checked the numbers on my phone, expecting nothing. First number, 7 matched. Then 22. My heart sped up. Then 14, 28, 3, 19. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped my phone. I rewatched the TV broadcast, seeing each number flash on the screen. "No way," I whispered to my empty apartment. The lottery site confirmed it. I'd won $73 million, about $44 million after taxes. A fortune for someone who'd been thrilled about a $5 coupon that morning. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I dove into online stories about lottery winners, families torn apart by greed, friends turning into leeches, lives crumbling. One article called it a shortcut to losing everything you love. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I'd keep this secret. Not from Mia, not from my family, not yet. I needed a plan before they started circling. Friday, I called in sick, first time in years, and booked an appointment with Lavra Hensley, a financial lawyer in a glossy downtown office. In my faded jeans, clutching the ticket in my purse, I felt out of place. "Miss Brooks," Lavra greeted, her calm demeanor steadying me. I slid the ticket across her desk. "I need to claim this without anyone knowing it's me." Her eyes widened briefly, then she nodded. Over 2 hours, she walked me through setting up a blind trust, handling taxes, and assembling a financial team. "The biggest mistake is telling people too soon," she said. "Once it's out, you can't take it back." For the next 10 days, I worked with Lavra to claim the prize, secure investments, and map out a future where money wasn't my worry. But on the outside, nothing changed, same job, same complaints about bills with coworkers. The secrecy started to feel heavy, and I couldn't stop wondering, would my family be happy for me, or would they just see dollar signs? Then a bold idea hit me. What if I could test their loyalty without revealing the money? What if I could find out who they really are before I decide who gets to know my secret? I'd lie and say I'd been laid off, needing $7,000 to cover rent and car repairs until I landed a new job. It was a believable amount, significant but not outrageous, and it would reveal who in my family truly cared about me. If you're wondering how far I'd take this plan, stick around, because what I discovered changed everything. Hit that like button and subscribe to Total Revenge to find out how this test exposed the truth about my family, and what I did with that $73 million. The idea consumed me. I spent hours crafting a story tight enough to fool even the skeptics in my family. I'd say the logistics company I worked for collapsed after a major client pulled out, leaving me without severance. I'd mention medical tests draining my savings, vague enough to sound real without inviting too many questions. The plan felt both thrilling and wrong, like I was about to pull off a heist on their hearts. But after years of being the family's go-to ATM, I needed to know who'd be there when I was the one asking for help. My life before the win had been a grind. I was always the responsible one, clipping coupons, skipping vacations, and driving a Civic that sounded like it was coughing up its last breath. I dreamed of a life where I could say yes to a spontaneous trip or a new laptop without sweating the cost. Now, with $44 million after taxes sitting in a blind trust, that life was possible. But I couldn't shake the fear that telling my family would turn my windfall into a nightmare. Would they love me or my money? The question gnawed at me, and this test was my way to find out. I confided part of the plan to Mia, my best friend, over takeout at my apartment, Her brown eyes narrowed as I explained. Sammy, this feels sneaky, she said, setting down her chopsticks. Why not just talk to them? I laughed, but it came out bitter. Talk? You know my family. They're great at taking, not so much at giving. Nia sighed. I get it, but lying to test them? That's a lot. What if it backfires? I shrugged, though her words stung. I need to know who's real, Mia. I can't risk this money changing everything for the worse. She didn't agree, but she helped me rehearse, coaching me to sound desperate but not over the top. Mention specific bills, she advised. Like, say your car needs a new transmission. People relate to that. I made a list of who to approach. Mom and Victor, Dad and Lorraine, Ethan and Claire. Natalie, Uncle Henry, Aunt Vivian and Chloe. 10 people who'd leaned on me for money or favors over the years. I predicted their responses in a notebook. Mom would offer sympathy but dodge helping. Dad would lecture me on budgeting. Ethan would cite his wedding expenses. Natalie would ghost me. Victor and Lorraine would flat out refuse. Vivian would judge my life choices. Chloe would make empty promises. Henry was my only hope. He'd always been kind, even if he had little to give. But $7,000 was a stretch for a librarian on a fixed income. The next week, I started the calls, heart pounding each time I dialed. First up was Mom. She answered on the second ring, her voice distracted. Sammy, what's wrong? You sound off. I launched into my story. The company folding, medical bills, the car breaking down. I let my voice crack just enough. I hate asking, Mom, but I need $7,000 to cover rent and repairs until I find work. I'll pay you back, I swear. Silence stretched on the other end. Oh, honey, that's awful, she said finally. Have you tried unemployment? Or maybe a side gig? I explained unemployment was delayed and my savings were gone. Please, Mom, rent's due soon. Another pause. Victor and I just redid the kitchen. Money's tight. Have you asked Ethan? He's doing well. I bit my lip. I was hoping not to bother him with the wedding coming up. She sighed. Let me talk to Victor. No promises though, he's strict about our budget. I thanked her, knowing that talk to Victor meant no help was coming. Next I met Dad for lunch at a diner. His greeting was blunt. You look stressed, Sammy. I told him the story, ending with the $7,000 request. He leaned back, arms crossed. I've always said you need an emergency fund. What happened to saving 3 months' expenses? I swallowed my frustration. Life, Dad. Medical bills, car issues. Not everyone can save like that. He launched into a 15-minute lecture about financial discipline, cutting subscriptions and moving to a cheaper apartment. Lorraine and I are saving for a cruise, he said finally. We can't touch that. This is a chance to learn resilience. I nodded, blinking back tears, not all of them fake. Ethan was worse. I visited his sleek condo, where Claire offered me sparkling water. I told them about the layoff and the $7,000. Ethan's face stayed neutral. That's rough, Sammy. But we're stretched thin with the wedding. Venue deposits, catering, it adds up. Maybe you could move in with us for a bit? The guest room's small, but we could make it work. I explained my job search was city-based, making moving tough. We'll talk it over, Ethan said, but his eyes flicked to his phone. I left knowing I'd hear nothing back. Natalie didn't disappoint my low expectations. I texted her the story, and her reply was a single line. Ouch, that sucks. Broke right now, sis. Call you soon. She didn't. My follow-up texts went unread, and her voicemail was full. This from the sister who'd borrowed $10,000 from me over the years, always with sob stories and no repayments. Victor was cold when I called. Sammy, I'm not your dad. Your mom's my priority, not your bills. Maybe accounting wasn't the best career choice. Lorraine was no better, brushing me off with, we helped you with that car payment 2 years ago. You need to budget better. When I reminded her I'd covered $2,000 for their deck repairs, she snapped, that was for family use. You benefited too. I hadn't seen their lake house in years. Chloe texted back enthusiastically. Oh my God, I'll totally help. Meet me tomorrow. But when I showed up at the cafe, she canceled last minute, claiming a work emergency. Her texts stopped after that. Aunt Vivian was predictably brutal. Sammy, I told you that company was shaky. You should have gone into finance like I said. She rambled about cousins who'd pulled themselves up without handouts, then texted Ethan later, calling me irresponsible. By Friday, I was drained. 7 people who'd taken my money or time over the years had offered nothing but excuses, lectures, or silence. The rejection stung more than I'd expected, confirming my worst fears about my family. Then my phone buzzed. It was Uncle Henry. Sammy, I heard from Ethan about your job. You okay? His voice was warm, concerned. I hadn't called him yet, planning to reach out last. The fact that he'd checked in after hearing secondhand meant everything. We met at a coffee shop near his library. Henry looked the same as always. Graying hair, worn sweater, a dog-eared book tucked under his arm. He hugged me tightly. I'm so sorry about your job, kiddo. Those companies chew up good people. Over coffee, he asked about my job search and offered to connect me with a friend who ran a small business. Then he slid an envelope across the table. It's $4,000, he said. Not the full $7,000 you need, but it'll help with rent. If you need a place to crash, my guest room's yours. I stared at the envelope, stunned. Henry, this is too much. He waved me off. Family's family. Pay it back when you're on your feet. No rush. Tears pricked my eyes, real ones. Henry, with the least to give, had offered nearly everything he had. I drove home clutching that envelope. His generosity a stark contrast to the rest of my family's responses. Later, I dug into Henry's situation and was floored. $4,000 was most of his savings. He'd been quietly managing arthritis, with rising medication costs eating into his budget. Yet he hadn't hesitated to help. That night, I invited Henry to my apartment for dinner. As he sat on my lumpy couch, I noticed how tired he looked, his hands stiff from long hours shelving books. Henry, I need to tell you something, I said, setting a mug of tea in front of him. I haven't been honest. His eyes met mine, curious but kind. What's up, Sammy? I took a deep breath. I didn't lose my job. The company's fine. I made it up to see who'd help me. He was quiet, then nodded. I'm not mad. Sad maybe that you felt you had to do this. But I get it. I swallowed hard. You were the only one who stepped up. Everyone else had excuses. He sighed. Money shows people's true colors when it's hard to give. I learned that with my sister Vivian. He told me about a time he'd lent Vivian $5,000 for a business investment she never repaid, claiming it was family money. The betrayal had hurt, but he'd moved on. Money's a mirror, Sammy, he said. It shows who you are, not just who others are. His words hit deep, and I made a decision. There's more, I said. I won the lottery 3 weeks ago. $73 million. His jaw dropped, but he stayed silent. You're the first to know. I needed to see who'd be there without the money. Henry smiled softly. That's wow, what now? I leaned forward. I want to help you. Your med's a better place, whatever you need. He shook his head. I'm okay, Sammy. My life's simple, but it's mine. Just knowing you're set means the world. We talked late into the night, his selflessness a beacon against my family's indifference. Meanwhile, word of my troubles had spread, sparking gossip instead of concern. Mom texted. Heard you're asking everyone for money. Why not tell me you were begging? Dad sent. Lorraine says you're hitting up the whole family. This is the irresponsibility I warned you about. They turned my plea into proof of my flaws, revealing more than I'd expected. The next morning, I met Lavra to plan my future. I want a trust for Henry, I told her. Something to cover his medical bills and give him a comfortable retirement, but subtle, he's proud. She nodded, suggesting a monthly stipend to avoid overwhelming him. And I want to buy him a condo nearby, something accessible for his arthritis. We mapped out investments, a nonprofit to support low-income seniors inspired by Henry, and my own move to a modest home. What about the rest of your family? Lavra asked. I shook my head. Not yet, maybe never. But I'm calling a family meeting to clear the air. I told Mia everything over coffee. She was stunned but understood my secrecy. So what's next? You gonna live like a secret millionaire clipping coupons? She teased. I laughed. No, but I'm not buying yachts either. I want this money to mean something, starting with Henry. She grinned. And the others? The ones who failed your test? I sighed. That's what the meeting's for. Sunday, my apartment was packed. Mom and Victor, Dad and Lorraine, Ethan and Claire, Natalie, Vivian, even Chloe showed up. Henry arrived last, giving me a knowing nod. As they settled in, eyeing my cramped space with judgment, I stood tall. Thanks for coming, I began. There's been talk about my finances, and I want to set things straight. Mom shifted. Natalie stared at her nails. Ethan avoided my eyes. I'm fine, I said. I got a new role running a nonprofit with better pay. A lie. Technically, I'd be heading my own foundation soon. Relief washed over their faces, but not for my sake. They'd come braced for another plea. Not good news. Why the sob story then? Dad asked, voice sharp. Why ask us all for money? I held his gaze. I was in trouble and turned to family. Isn't that what we do? Silence fell. Victor cleared his throat. We all have our own bills, Sammy. It's not always possible to help. I turned to Natalie. You didn't even reply to my texts, Nat. But you had no issue asking me for $4,000 last year. She flushed. I was in a bad spot, okay? The room grew tense, excuses piling up as I called out their hypocrisy. No one apologized, just deflected. Henry stayed after they left, helping with dishes. You were brave, he said. That took guts. I smiled. It was easier than I thought. I'm done chasing their approval. He nodded. So, what's next? I grinned. We start house hunting for both of us. What happens when you test the people you love and they fail? Stay tuned to Total Revenge to find out how I turned $73 million into a new life, and who got to be part of it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever tested someone's loyalty? Hit like and subscribe for the next part of this wild journey. 1 year later, my life was a world away from that Thursday when I stared at those 6 matching lottery numbers. I traded my leaky studio for a cozy sunlit bungalow in a quiet Denver neighborhood, with a small garden where I grew lavender and tomatoes. 3 blocks away stood Henry's new condo, a single-story haven with wide doorways for his arthritis and a porch where he'd sit with his coffee and books. My nonprofit, Second Start, had taken off beyond my wildest dreams. We provided financial aid, home repairs, and companionship to low-income seniors, inspired by Henry's quiet strength and the countless others like him. In our first year, we'd helped over 250 elderly folks in Colorado, giving them dignity and security. Mia had joined as our community director, her design skills and warm heart shaping our outreach. Our weekly wine nights now happened in my airy living room, not my cramped old apartment. Though we still laughed over the same bad reality TV. If you've ever found someone who shows up for you no matter what, tell me about it in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to Total Revenge for more stories about rewriting your life on your own terms. My relationship with my family had shifted into something distant but honest. I kept polite contact, birthday texts, the occasional holiday dinner, but the illusion of closeness was gone. Without that pressure, their indifference hurt less. They didn't know about the $73 million. To them, I'd simply landed a lucky break running a nonprofit, and their lack of curiosity about my new job said it all. There were moments I almost spilled the truth, like when Natalie called, asking for $5,000 for a surefire online boutique, or when Ethan griped about his wedding costs. But each time I remembered their silence when I'd needed help, and my resolve hardened. Still, I wasn't heartless. When Mom faced a car accident and hefty hospital bills, I paid them anonymously through a medical charity. When Chloe finally entered a debt counseling program, I covered the fees through an untraceable donation. They never knew, and I liked it that way. It let me help without opening the door to their expectations. Henry became my anchor. We had dinner twice a week, often at his condo, where he'd share stories from his library days over homemade soup. His arthritis had eased with better medication, funded by the trust I'd set up, and he'd retired to volunteer at a literacy nonprofit, reading to kids with the same passion he'd always had. One evening, as we watched the sunset from his porch, he said, "You know what gets me, Sammy? How close you came to telling everyone about that money right away." I nodded, picturing the chaos, endless sob stories, fake tears, demands. "You'd have been swarmed," he added, "and you'd never have known who was real." He was right. My test, as painful as it was, had given me clarity. It showed me who deserved my trust and who didn't. If you're wondering how I turned that clarity into a life I love, keep watching, because the real revenge wasn't what I expected. The family meeting had been the turning point. Standing in my cramped apartment, facing Mom, Victor, Dad, Lorraine, Ethan, Claire, Natalie, Vivian, and Chloe, I'd felt a strange calm. I'd told them I was fine, with a new nonprofit job, and called out their refusal to help when I'd asked. Their excuses, budgets, priorities, my poor choices piled up, but no one apologized. As they left, their defensiveness lingered like a bad smell. Henry stayed behind, washing dishes beside me. "You stood your ground," he said. "Not easy with this crew." I smiled. I'm done trying to win them over. I know who's real now. That night, I realized the money hadn't just given me financial freedom, it had given me the courage to see my relationships for what they were and to walk away from the ones that drained me. Setting up Second Start was my true turning point. I'd always wanted work that mattered, not just another paycheck. Inspired by Henry's selflessness, I built a nonprofit that mirrored his values, helping seniors who, like him, had big hearts but small bank accounts. We fixed leaking roofs, paid utility bills, and paired seniors with volunteers for weekly check-ins. One woman, Clara, a 78-year-old widow, told me our grocery deliveries let her eat fresh fruit for the first time in years. Stories like hers made the long hours worth it. Mia's outreach programs brought in volunteers, and our small team felt like a family, something I'd never had with my own. Running Second Start wasn't glamorous. I still drove my old Civic, now with a quieter engine, and lived simply. But every dollar I spent felt like it had purpose, unlike the years I'd poured money into family members who never gave back. The money itself was a tool, not my identity. Lavra, my financial lawyer, had set up a bulletproof plan, diverse investments, a trust for Henry, and a modest personal account for me. I didn't need mansions or private jets. I wanted a life that felt mine. My bungalow, with its creaky porch and herb garden, was enough. I'd started taking online graphic design courses, a nod to the dreams I'd shelved in my 20s. I traveled a little, weekend trips to Seattle or Santa Fe, nothing flashy. But each one felt like a gift to the Sammy who'd once clipped coupons to afford coffee. The constant financial anxiety I'd carried for decades was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence that I could handle whatever came next. If you've ever broken free from a weight like that, share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you did it. There were moments I questioned my secrecy. When Ethan's fiancée, Claire, called to invite me to their wedding, I wondered if I should tell them about the money, maybe offer to help with costs. But then I remembered Ethan's excuse, wedding expenses, when I'd ask for help, and I stayed silent. When Natalie showed up at my new place, commenting on how fancy it wasn't. I sensed her fishing for details about my finances. I deflected, saying the nonprofit paid decently, and she dropped it. Their lack of genuine interest in my life made it easier to keep the secret. Henry, though, knew everything. He never asked for more than I'd already given. A trust for his medical bills and a condo he called too much but loved. His gratitude wasn't about the money. It was about our bond, built on years of small, real moments. The biggest surprise wasn't my family's reactions, it was what I learned about myself. Before the lottery, I'd measured my worth by what I could give others. I'd say yes to every family request, thinking it proved I was a good daughter, sister, niece. I'd let them use me because I thought love meant sacrifice. Henry's $4,000 envelope changed that. He gave without expecting anything back, showing me what real love looked like. It didn't keep score or come with strings. It was steady, present, whether I had $73 million or $73. That lesson reshaped me. I stopped chasing approval from people who'd never give it and started building a life around those who showed up, Henry, Mia, and now the seniors we served through Second Start. The test had been my revenge, but not in the way I'd first imagined. I didn't need to flaunt my wealth or cut my family off dramatically. The real revenge was living authentically, free from their judgment. By keeping the money secret, I protected my peace and gained the clarity to choose who belonged in my life. The $73 million didn't change who my family wait, it just showed me who they'd always been. Mom was still distracted, Dad still lecturing, Ethan still self-absorbed, Natalie still unreliable. Their responses to my test were just louder echoes of patterns I'd ignored for years. Letting go of the need to fix those relationships was my freedom. One evening, as Henry and I ate pasta on his porch, he asked, "Any regrets about keeping it quiet?" I thought about it, watching the sky turn orange. "No," I said. "If I'd told them, I'd be fighting off their demands instead of building something real." He nodded. "You used that money to find your people, Sammy. That's the win." He was right. The lottery hadn't just given me millions. It had given me truth. Second Start, my home, my design classes, my dinners with Henry, they were my real fortune. I'd traded a family that saw me as a resource for one that saw me as Sammy. Now my life is full in ways I never expected. Second Start is expanding to Boulder, with plans for a mentorship program pairing seniors with young volunteers. I'm halfway through my design course, sketching ideas for our nonprofit's logo. Mia and I still bicker over wine about who'd win in a reality TV cook-off. And Henry started writing short stories, inspired by the kids he reads to. The money's there, safe in investments, but it's not what drives me. It's the purpose I've found, the boundaries I've set, and the people who stay because of who I am, not what I have. What's the biggest lesson you've learned about trust or family? Share it in the comments below. I'm reading everyone. If this story hit home, hit that like button and subscribe to Total Revenge for more real-life tales of betrayal, clarity, and taking back your power. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't tied to what they give others. Thanks for watching, and here's to finding the people who show up when it counts.